Movies utilize many different techniques when it comes to storytelling. Sometimes the most trivial thing can work out as a perfect vessel for a story. One of these things is hair. Oh, how I love the hair symbolism. How it can work alongside the character, giving us viewers visual keys about the change in their inner world, emotional state, and motivations. In this video, we will look at some of the excellent examples of hair used as a storytelling device.
Okie dokie.
First, we're gonna look at the mother of dragons herself, Daenerys Targaryen.
My reign has just begun.
Her hair quite literally represents her conquest of Westeros. According to customs she adopted, braids symbolize experience in battle. We learn about the Dothraki tradition, and after Drogo's demise, we see Daenerys honoring and embracing it. When we first meet her, her hair is let loose, and as she's leaving her innocence behind and learning how to survive and thrive, getting accustomed to violence along the way, her hair gets more and more complex braids. We can quite literally observe her growth as a character looking at her hair. Another show that uses hair to illustrate characters' journey is Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is a show that uses a lot of symbolism, but I'm going to focus particularly on the characters of Zuko and Azula, and how in their case hair was utilized to provide us with an insight into their inner world. Zuko has a very particular hairstyle at the beginning of the story that appeared to be a traditional hairstyle worn by his nation. As he journeys around the world trying so desperately to be able to get back home, he slowly begins to realize that his nation did a lot of harm to others. His values start to misalign. His hair changes as he goes through that process. He cuts it, then grows it out, and by the end of the journey, when he is fully transformed as a character, we see him wearing it freely, waving it in the wind as he's free from his previous convictions. Azula also cuts her hair. Cutting hair can generally carry quite a big meaning and can be a defining moment for a character. We quite often observe it as characters are snapping or are at a turning point or making some big change. In case of Azula, it's definitely a snap scene. Her hair represents her strive for perfection. We see it being mentioned in relation to her perfectionism before. Then as she's at her boiling point and tries to fix her hair, she ends up getting so annoyed by it. She cuts it, making it infinitely worse, of course, and giving herself that manic look that underscores her mental breakdown at this scene. For the rest of the show, we see her with her hair let loose, looking pretty wild, comparing to her usual tight and tidy updo. This gives us this juicy contrast that makes us feel just how much this character went off the rails. Another good example is Jinx in Arcane.
Hi.
I'd say her hair mostly represents her alignment in the story. That's why it differs much between different dimensions. When Echo visits that other dimension where Jinx was not born, Powder's hair very much resemble her original look as a child, representing her identity left pretty much intact, unlike in the version where she becomes Jinx. She also cuts it in the story, and that is both representative of her alignment. She literally destroys everything that keeps her connected to her life with Silco. And her snapping, a mental breakdown she suffers from that makes her want to unalive herself. That's why she's doing all of this. Long hair, despite being worn by both sexes, was also associated by many cultures with femininity, and an act of cutting it quite often represents an act of defiance against social norms and limitations. That was in Mulan's case. The famous scene where she was cutting her hair was so powerful, as not only she was doing it to be able to pass as a man, but that in the same moment she was rejecting those stiff notions of femininity imposed on her by the society and embracing the danger of risking her life by going against it in order to try to save her father. This scene holds so much weight as we have seen her trying to fit this mold and being unsuccessful at it and miserable, so it brings a strange sense of release to us as viewers to see her leaving it behind. Another interesting example of it is Amy Dunne from Gone Girl.
Nick and Amy will be gone, but then we never really existed.
She's also seemingly cutting her hair to disguise herself, but there is so much more to the scene. It's no coincidence that the famous Cool Girl monologue accompanies this act. She's leaving the cool girl behind and is embracing what there is beyond the shallow structure she built around femininity in order to attract and keep a man. The fake persona she created that represented a perfect woman for him. This act adds to the weight of the scene, further underscoring her shift as a character. We see a similar thing in Malena. She first wears her hair long in her natural color as the whole town lusts over her. We see that lust becoming predatory, and her act of cutting her hair is her trying to gain control over the situation in a way by using her looks rather than being used for her looks. It's a heartbreaking scene as she's forced into that lifestyle, but she's trying to gain some advantage. We see her leaving her previous self as she cuts and dyes her hair red at first, then changes it to blonde as we see her settling into that new lifestyle and eventually being dragged out by the hair by angry mob made of women who then proceed to cut it and beat her up. This was unfortunately a common practice in real life. Some women were getting this kind of treatment for sleeping with the enemy, no matter their personal circumstances. Generally, where cutting one's hair can be seen as an empowering act, forcing someone to cut their hair is usually the opposite, is disempowering someone, taking all their power away. We see that happening in Fruits Basket when Isuzu's hair is cut by Akito. Since she is a representation of horse sign in Zodiac, her mane or hair is a very strong characteristic of her spirit animal. So it further emphasized just how much powerless she is towards Akito, and we see this strong-willed and free-spirited character losing her own nature around Akito. The only positive example of cutting someone's hair being framed as something actually empowering is Tangled. When Finn cuts Rapunzel's hair, he frees her from her shackles, an evil stepmother who uses the same hair to control her and draw power from it. Cut. Too much about the cutting. Let's get back to our analysis. We have two more characters or two more hair to discuss. First one is Elsa from Frozen. When we first meet Elsa, she's wearing her braid. She's little and we see her in her carefree state. We can say it's her baseline. She's playing with her sister, causes a tragedy, and ends up being locked away. As she grows up in solitude and tries to rigidly control her powers, her hairstyle also becomes much more tight. When her parents die and she eventually is preparing for her coronation, we see her mental health further deteriorating as she is ruled by fear. She snaps under pressure, accidentally reveals her powers and runs away. We then see her visibly going back to that childhood innocence and wonder she left behind because she was afraid to explore her powers and was constantly either suppressing her powers or suppressing her own emotions. We see her smiling again, and that carefreeness we saw at the beginning of the movie returns, and she's excited like a little child as she, first time in years, unleashes her powers while singing about letting go. She lets it go, lets down her hair, and we kind of see her returning to that baseline with her braid, the time she felt free when she wasn't suppressing anything. She eventually manages to emotionally reunite with her sister, and she ends up on that note. The second movie takes us on a journey of her growth. I don't think it's a coincidence that her creation is singing about growing older, as the whole show's underlying theme is growth, and each character has its own fair share of it. But Elsa is not only growing as a character, but sheds another layer of herself. As she's letting go once more, this time of all of her character, she realizes that she's an ancient spirit and has her own role to play. Throughout her journey, we see her loosening her hair again. Now she doesn't wear it in a braid, but just ties it, as she's taking on that personal journey. And when she changes into her final form that will eventually lead to her abandoning everything that she has known, we see her yet again loosening her hair. This time she just lets it loose. It represents both the restrictions that she's breaking loose from, but also letting go of her attachment to Arendelle as a whole. When she's in her final form, her loose hair shows us that now she's truly free. Possibly the vastest way of utilizing her in storytelling was applied to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's one of my favorite movies, and if you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's absolutely amazing. The story is based around Joel and Clementine as we follow their chaotic love story trying to work out what is going on as the movie has a twist. I don't want to say too much in case you haven't seen it and want to watch it, but Clementine's hair is a very powerful tool that not only tells us exactly which parts of the story we are observing, but also pretty much symbolizes the shifting mood of their relationship. We establish very early in the story that Clementine uses her hair to represent her emotions, and if we begin to analyze the colors she dyes her hair with, we can see a clean picture of her inner state. We get 4 hair colors in the story as to represent the 4 seasons of the relationship: spring, summer, autumn and winter. When she first meets Joel and begins dating him, her hair is a green color of freshness, spring and new beginnings. It further emphasizes the beginning of the relationship as they begin falling in love with one another. Then came a summer of love, so to speak, and her hair reflected that. She rocked red hair at that time, a color of fire and passion. She was happily in love, reaping the fruit of her relationship. Then, as we see the relationship falling apart, she's dyeing her hair orange. The red pales away as she's entering the stage where she appears to actively dislike her boyfriend. And the whole relationship is crumbling and eventually falls apart. Then, as she deals with breakup, we see her wearing her hair blue, the color of sadness in winter. The Take has an awesome video about it, which I'm going to link in the description of this video, but there are spoilers, so if you are interested in the movie, watch it first, I'd say. I can't recommend it enough, it's just amazing. What about you? Do you know any other examples that I forgot to mention in this video? Please let me know in the comments. I love the art of storytelling and dissecting it in search of new tools and techniques, so if you're interested in this kind of thing, please stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel. For now, I wish you a very lovely week and I'll speak to you later. Bye!